We're in the middle of a massive transformation, a real shift from a physical world to one that's more and more defined by digital systems. And this presents a huge challenge for one of our oldest institutions, the law. To really understand how we can build a legal system for this new reality, our explainer today is based on the work of Professor Kiskinov.
So this is really the heart of the matter. How do you take a system of rules that was designed for tangible things, for physical actions, and apply it to a world that's intangible, that has no borders, and that operates at the speed of light? It's a question that really forces us to go back to square one and rethink what law even is and what it's supposed to do.
And Professor Kiskinov's insights are so valuable here. They give us a structured way to think about not just the problems we're facing, but a clear method for actually building a legal framework that's fit for the 21st century. His work is essentially the blueprint for our entire discussion today.
So here's the path we're going to take. We'll kick things off by looking at this new digital frontier for law. Then we'll get into the crucial role of what are called scientific tasks. After that, we'll take a look back at traditional law to understand why it's not enough anymore, and then we'll dive into the real core of the idea, building a virtual legal reality, defining what's called a new legal ontology, and finally looking at what it means to architect the future of law.
Okay, let's start with the fundamental challenge. You see, the rise of our information society isn't just about new technology, it's actually creating entirely new social systems, new ways for us to interact. This new world demands way more than just patching up old laws. It really requires a whole new theoretical foundation.
Now, to build that new foundation, Professor Kiskinov argues that we first have to understand the architect's blueprint. And that means we have to be really clear about defining our goals, our tasks, and our methods. It's this systematic approach that separates just, randomly solving problems from deliberately constructing a system that actually works.
First up, you have the goal. Think of this as the final destination. It's the ideal, maybe even abstract vision of what we're trying to achieve. For us, that's a fair and functional legal system for the information society. The goal is the what and the why. Next, we have the task. A task is basically a piece of the goal. It breaks that big, abstract vision down into concrete, manageable steps. Tasks are the specific things we actually have to do to get closer to our goal. They're the how, you could say, the individual building blocks.
And finally, we have the method. Now, a method is different from a task because it's a formally defined and, critically, a repeatable process. So while a task might be a one-off action, a method is like a standardized tool that we can use over and over again to perform similar tasks efficiently and get consistent results. So let's see how this all fits together. Imagine your goal is to build a house. The tasks would be the major phases, right? Laying the foundation, framing the walls, putting on the roof. The methods are the specific, repeatable techniques you use for those tasks, like a very particular recipe for mixing concrete, or a specific way of joining timbers. This hierarchy, goal, task, method, is really the engine behind any rational constructive project.
Okay, so with that framework in mind, let's turn our attention to traditional law and see exactly why its old blueprints just aren't good enough anymore. For centuries, the general theory of law had a completely different set of tasks, all shaped by a pre-digital world.
This quote from the jurist G.F. Scherzenevich really nails the traditional view. The main job of legal theory was to look inward, to synthesize and organize the legal knowledge that already existed. It was a science of observation and cataloging, not a science of construction.
And this table here shows the massive shift we need to make. In the past, legal theory was mostly an academic exercise, pretty disconnected from the immediate, practical needs of society. The new theory we need has to be the exact opposite. It's driven by urgent, real-world problems. And here's the crucial part. While past theory always struggled to define how law actually exists, its ontology, the new theory demands that we build an ontology for the virtual world.
Which brings us to the very heart of the argument. Defining the new, constructive tasks, we need to build what Professor Kiskinov calls a virtual legal reality. This isn't about observing the law anymore, it's about actively architecting it for a brand new environment. So, these are the new areas of work. We have to analyze how our digital society is actually structured. We need to figure out how law can even operate in a virtual world. We have to create totally new legal methods. We must define a new legal system and its very basis for existence. And then, ultimately, we have to construct this virtual legal reality. The starting point for all of this, and it's absolutely crucial, is society itself.
The very first task is to map out how the new systems of digital life, everything from social media networks to e-commerce platforms, can be translated into effective legal rules. In other words, the law has to reflect the reality that it's supposed to govern.
And now we get to what is maybe the most profound task of all, defining a new legal ontology. Now, ontology is just the philosophical study of existence, of what it means for something to be. So for law, it means asking a really fundamental question. If law isn't just words in a book, what and where is it in a digital space?
I mean, really think about that for a second. In the past, you could literally point to a law book or a courthouse as the physical home of the law. But in a virtual world, where does it live? Is it in the software code of a platform? Is it in some shared database? How can we observe it and study it like it's a real object? This is a puzzle that traditional legal theory never really solved.
Professor Kiskinov's answer is to define law's existence as a system we can actually objectify and directly observe inside a digital environment. This means creating a virtual legal reality where legal rules and processes aren't just abstract ideas, but are modeled as interactive systems that anyone can access and see for themselves.
The results of doing this would be absolutely transformative. Legal rules would become transparent and directly available to everybody. Legal research could shift from just studying a few representative court cases to analyzing the entire system of legal relationships a rule creates. This would give us an incredibly rich, data-driven foundation for understanding the real impact of our laws.
So what does all this mean in the real world? This new architectural approach to law isn't just an academic exercise. Taking on these tasks has profound practical effects on the relationship between law, technology, and all of us in society.
Well, for starters, by taking on these constructive tasks, that gap between abstract legal theory and concrete legal practice just vanishes. Theory becomes a tool for actually building solutions. Things like citizens' rights get new life because we can build new mechanisms to enforce them in the digital world. And maybe most fundamentally, legal knowledge itself changes. It becomes more dynamic, more accessible, and more systemic than ever before.
And this all brings us to a pretty clear conclusion. Traditional legal theory was descriptive. It was focused on organizing what already existed. The digital age demands a new, constructive theory of law, one that sees its main task as actively building a virtual legal reality where rules are observable and accessible to all. And that leaves us with one final critical question. As the architects of our digital world, what kind of law will we choose to build?